Alright, so what's been going on with Jaimie? I had a minor medical emergency. Don't worry, I'm totally gonna live and everything will be fine. But one of the things people are always asking me about is living off grid is what do I do about medical situations? Like, how do I get to the hospital? Well, even when I lived in the city, I almost never went to a hospital or a doctor. Actually, I can't remember the last time I went to see a medical professional. And I didn't this time either. Well, let me tell you what happened. I had this little bug bite. Don't worry, this isn't some weird tropical disease story. It was just like a regular, not even a mosquito bite. I scratched it, and I'm pretty sure I had filthy hands, and I got an infection. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was just emotionally and physically really worn down, and so my immune system was kind of like not operating at full power. I'd be lying if I thought that had nothing to do with it. Anyway, I got this infected ankle right under here, and if you look up, I'm like 90% sure it was a staph infection, or is a staph infection. The infection seems to be gone now. It's just healing. Now, if you look up staph infection online, you'll see like worst case scenarios with like half people's heads missing and stuff like that. There's nothing anywhere near that bad. Just it's more like a dime-sized oozing zit thing. And my foot swelled up. So, when it got to the point where my foot swelled up, I was like, oh, I need to pay attention to this for real. So I asked around a little bit, and of course everyone was like, oh, you gotta go to the doctor, you gotta go to the hospital, you gotta go to the hospital, ah. And I'm like, whoa. I'm not gonna go to the hospital first thing. And the reason is there's a certain risk associated with going to the hospital that people often ignore because they've been trained to be so afraid, and the hospital is like the only thing that can solve the problem, and if you don't go, then you're just gonna die. And let me give you a very brief history of how that happened. So, a super long time ago, just anyone would have known the best medical treatment for something. If someone broke their leg or got cut with an infection, they'd know, oh, you put this plant on it, or you wrap this up that way, because the information was just free. No one was hiding it. And then at some point, some smart-ass medicine man realized that he could, or she, or whoever they are, could control people by hoarding information. And instead of just giving it out freely, they could be like, haha, now everyone's going to have to come to me, and now I don't really have to do any work. I can just kind of hang out, and I got an easy life. Cool, man. So then you get, to like the Middle Ages in England, or the Dark Ages in England, where I think that was kind of the height of that, where they weren't even trying to medically help anyone anymore. Like if you stub your toe, or you get hurt in some way, a church guy comes in, a priest comes in and bleeds you. Or if you have a headache, the priest will come in and drill some holes in your head to let the demons out. And this all had nothing to do with medicine or medical anything. It just was like a way of controlling people and taking from them. It was all about greed. Anyway, the medical establishment today is still very greed focused, very, very money hungry. Now, I'm not saying they can't do anything useful. There's amazing technology. What I'm talking about is the culture, which is a problem. Because the culture is that any medicine that makes money is good. Any medicine that does not make money is bad. So this basically means anything that is naturally occurring in the natural world gets shoved aside. So all that stuff, all that potentially useful stuff, is just totally disregarded. Only synthetic stuff that can be made in the lab that pharmaceutical companies can have a monopoly over is useful. So I kind of see the medical establishment as a last resort. Because I would like to try a lot of these other things before I get to that point. And the reason I don't buy that anything natural is worthless and useless and has no effect is because take something like arsenic. arsenic is a naturally occurring thing. You can't tell me that's useless, because if you eat arsenic, you will die. And medical professionals will admit, yes, this naturally occurring thing, if you eat it, you will die, because they will freely talk about naturally occurring things that will kill you, just not naturally occurring things that will heal you. And that doesn't make sense, because if the natural world was all about killing things, then why is the planet covered in life? So anyway, if I go to a hospital, what they're going to do, like with this infection, is they're going to say, oh, here's some antibiotics. Pay, money, money, money. Go take your antibiotics and go away. Good thing you came, because you would have died otherwise. So then I take the antibiotics. Now, there are a lot of things that are becoming more antibiotic resistant because they're used so much. So if I happen to have some infection that's antibiotic resistant, then I'm not going to kill the infection. All I'm going to do is reduce my immune system. Because the antibiotics are not good for you either. They're bad for your thing, but they're also really bad for you. Which is one of the ways that the medical establishment makes more money, is because anything they fix always has side effects. Then you need something for that, and then you need something for that, and it's just this endless thing that you have to keep getting more medical treatment for, which is not good. And at some point you have to break off it and say, okay, I just need to let things heal naturally, or whatever. Anyway, I'm not saying I would not go to the hospital at any point, but if I can get things to improve on my own, I'll go with that. So what I ended up doing was, first I talked to, people who were like, just go to the hospital, you need antibiotics or you're going to die. And then I was like, okay, let me disregard that. I know that line. So I talked to a few other people, and the thing that ended up working was an onion. I was told either mince up an onion or take an onion slice and put it on the thing and wrap it up. An hour later, throw away the onion, because the onion will have drawn out, attracted a lot of the toxins and whatever's in there into the onion. So then the onion's really gross, I need to get rid of it, but a lot of that stuff will be out of my leg. Now, I don't know that that's what happened, but that is very consistent with how things went. Because when I started doing the onion treatment, a few hours into it, probably by the third onion, the redness was disappearing, the swelling was going down, things were starting to feel normal again. So then at that point I was like, okay, let me just keep doing this. I don't think I need to go to the hospital or anything. Let me just keep doing this. And another thing is I was putting turmeric on it, because I read, I did some research obviously, and found that turmeric is good for infections. So onions and turmeric, naturally occurring things. I already had them here. I didn't have to go to some weird lab to get stuff magically made. Anyway, so my foot's not swollen at this point, and it looks like the infection is totally gone. And right now, there's still this kind of wound that's still partly opened on the back of my ankle. So I'm just taking a few more days to let that heal and close up before I go and get dirty again. So, that's basically it. I don't feel any more in danger living off-grid than I would if I was living right beside a hospital. If anything, I would feel more in danger living near a hospital or in a city, because everyone's always sick in a city all the time. Obviously I'm exaggerating. Everyone's not sick all the time, but man, people are sick a lot in the city. And in the 15 years I've been off-grid, the number of times I've had an infection or this is actually the only kind of injury that I've had like this, anything even remotely like this. But the number of times I've been sick in general is so small compared to when I lived in the city. And when I've lived off-grid, almost always, if I or one of my family members is sick, it's because someone visited from the city. From a city where they just brought all these germs, got on an airplane, which is a box full of germs, drove in a bus, which is another box full of germs, just passing around all these germs and stuff. But living off-grid, I almost never get sick. I feel the health risks of living off the grid are so much lower than the risks of living in a city or some place near a hospital where I can be safe. Now, of course, there is always a chance that at some point I'll get a heart attack or something, and if I don't have a hospital right there, I'm gonna die. And if that happens, and I'm here, then I die. But the risk of me getting a heart attack living off the grid in nature with fresh air and exercise versus the risks of me getting a heart attack while living in a city that's polluted, where everything's stressful, the risk is much less being here. It's just if I do get a heart attack, I don't have a lot I can do about it other than, maybe take an aspirin or whatever. But I mean, if I'm in a physical state where I'm getting heart attacks, I kind of feel like I should be dead anyway.